Good evening. It is another episode of Spiritual Calling, and so it means that it's Tuesday, 8 o'clock, and I wasn't available last week. I was actually very sick last week. I was trying to get over a flu that just would not go away. It was holding on for dear life. I think I mentioned that I was a little bit under the weather the week before that happened, and it seemed like it got worse and worse. And then last week it just took all my energy, and I just couldn't. I couldn't hack it, but I'm back this week. So I'm glad to be back. I feel great, and I'm glad I'm back with you. Just in the 1 week that I've been gone, there have been so many changes with Awaken Radio, and many good changes, and I'm looking forward to just many wonderful changes with AwakenRadio.net, and just seeing how it's going to make an impact on the world, you know. So I can't wait to see how we're going to change the world, and I definitely want our viewers to be a part of that. And how I want to be a part of changing the world is through this infamous website that I've been talking about, spiritualcalling.com, and actually www.spiritual-calling.com. And I've, have been constantly, every day I'm working on this website, and finally I've gotten somewhere. I'm very happy that I've gotten a little bit somewhere, and it's giving me some hope with hoping that it'll be completed soon. And again, I'm constantly telling people, it's taking a lot longer than I ever expected. But, sometimes just to give the extra loving that is required, it needs that extra time. So hopefully it'll be done soon. I'm getting other people involved, which I thought I wouldn't have to do, but I'm getting other professionals involved so that I can get sure that it's something that when people come, they are blown away. This is not your little HTML website, do it yourself. It's really not. If it was that, it would already be up and running. It is a really dynamic website where people can go and leave something, put something how they feel and what their concerns are, what their loves are. So I'm really putting my soul into it. So just be praying for me and letting me know and that you're excited about it as well. I might it gives me an idea. I just might decide to put a little blog on the temporary site, just to give me a little bit of emotional support. I did put a link on my Facebook page, www.spiritual-calling.index.html. So you click. If you go to my Spiritual Calling Facebook page, you can just you'll see the link there and about section, and you can click on that, and it's right now it just says spiritual calling coming soon. That's all it says now, but just go there and check it out. I mean, even though it's just one page, still you can go there and check it out, so don't be afraid. So Becky Cam 1 is in the chat room. She says, "Hi Donna, hi all, very best greetings from Austria." Hi Austria, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. It's always great to see international listeners and American listeners. And so a lot of things going on, and I'm not a big news person. I don't put the TV on and just have the news blaring at me. I don't do that. And so, but when things happen in the world, sometimes it's getting so much news media and so much news coverage that you can't help. You can't ignore it. It's in your face. So, me who don't watch television and try to stay away from it when I can, sometimes it's impossible. But when I can, saw that there were things going on in the world that I could not ignore. So one of those things were that Beyonce was caught lip syncing, and I thought, this is so ridiculous. Why do I care, and why does anybody care, and why is this in my face? Why is it something that I'm concerned about? It was all over the internet, so I couldn't avoid it. I couldn't avoid knowing about this story, that it was out in the atmosphere. So it was just pretty crappy that and I thought, wow, I'm here trying to avoid stories just like that. And, no television, don't cut television on. If I do see anything, I'll see it on YouTube, or, I'll see it when I'm just on the internet, which I do love, because I get to pick and choose what I decide to have coming at me. And that just, blared at me. So I was kind of, PO'd that I knew that people cared that Beyonce was lip syncing the national anthem. Like this was shocking that someone, has a backup track. So then paying my, just doing my regular thing, being me. And then I noticed that, people are concerned that Michelle Obama rolled her eyes, at Bainum, somebody. And I just thought, wow, what has news gotten to where we're so concerned about someone having a backup track and someone watching someone interact with someone else and sort of give them a look like, what you're saying doesn't make any sense. And this is all over the internet. And if it's all over the internet, it's all over the television, and it's blaring at me. So I just it just shows me that thank God I don't have a television on to have this stuff coming at me with all the opinions. I didn't have the opinions. I didn't have anyone saying this is how they think. Because now we have the people who get up there and give their commentary about what's going on in events, and then you hear all this extra negativity coming at you when someone's telling me that how I should feel about something. So that was shocking, and so then I couldn't stay away. I mean, I couldn't say, well, let me not, ignore it. I wasn't going to do that. So of course I went on YouTube and looked it up and saw that it was about nothing. It wasn't about anything. It was just ridiculous. So it was just interesting. I thought, if that's interesting to you, if that's news to you, please call me. Let me know, so I can ask you. Why is that news? And the number here is 334-649-7204. Again, that's 334-649-7204. Just call and, give me some feedback about what's really important news and what kind of news isn't important at all, because sometimes it kind of confuses me about why is something getting media attention. So, with that being said, I want to talk about tonight's topic. I was in my journal. I'm an avid journal writer. I'm always writing in my journal every day. Almost every day. There are some days when I do give my journal a break, but mostly every day, the first place I go is my journal, and I'm always updating my journal throughout the day. And it was 20 questions that I ran into. I ran into 20 questions that I think any spiritual person is going to be asking. And I just, was blown away by these questions that I saw when I went to this page. And the first question, I'm like, wow, do I have an answer for that? What's my answer? And it said, why is there poverty and suffering in the world? Why is there poverty and suffering in the world? And I began trying to answer that. I began trying to answer that question. And I'll give you my answer in just a second. But there's someone in the chat room at www.awakenedradio.net/live chat room, and not someone, it's Miss Donna Devane, and she said, "Do you journal about the news?" No, I don't journal about the news. That I don't, because to me, oh no, it's not Donna. I'm sorry. This is Rob. Hey Rob, how you doing? I'm sorry, I'm not seeing. I don't have my bifocals on. But Rob, you're asking me in the chat room, David, did you journal about the news? No, I don't journal about the news because my journal is what I said. It's a place that I go for inspiration. So when I go back and I look at previous journal entries, I don't go looking to depress myself. I go there to look for inspiration, to look for hope, to look for spirituality, a connection to self. What do I believe? So I go there for those things. So I don't put, I have never put in news events into my my journal. Maybe something like 9/11. I might put something in there like that, or something that really has hit the nation, or a hurricane, something like that. Maybe something with the weather or something like that. Very, very important. But rarely I ever put something about the news, because it's like, my journal is a place that I go for inspiration. And if I'm putting horrible, negative things in my journal, and then 2 years go by, and I have a place in WordPress where I currently keep my journals, is WordPress.com, which is a great place to do your journal. And I'll tell you more about that. If you don't have a journal set up already, you can go to WordPress.com and set your journal up. And there's a place where you can get a random post. So you log into your journal or your blog, and you hit give me a random post or some random place in my journal, and it will shoot there. And I've done this, and there have been times, and I haven't always been the positive person that I am, that I try to be. And I go back and I went, wow, in 2004, I was really negative, on that day. On that day, I was really negative. And you begin to understand how negativity is can be contagious. Something that you wrote in 2004 can hunt you all the way in 2013. And you go back and read it, and you begin feeling those emotions, that worry, that anger, all that I felt, and I did. I felt all that anger and rage that I felt all the way back in 2004. So, and I said, well, if this is what, I'm setting up for myself, then I better make some changes. So no, I'm very careful about what I put in my journal to make sure that when I'm looking at previous journals entries, it's a source of inspiration, and and I'm gonna tell it like it is kind of guy. I'm gonna tell it like it is, but when you're telling it like it is, be sure you're telling it like it is that's going to benefit you, because your story, the story that we tell ourselves, is to be very careful about the story that we tell ourselves. Because if it's a negative story that we're telling ourselves, not only is it affecting you now, it's going to affect you years down the line, the negative story that you tell. Because now, the story that you tell, we're creatures of habit, and we have to continue experiencing the reality that story is bringing to us. Each story has a reality along with it. So I'm very careful about what I put in my journal. All that to say that. So back to why is there poverty and suffering in the world? And my answer to that was, in history, there have always been the few who have had plenty. And we'll talk about that. I saw a wonderful documentary yesterday that I thought was just great. And I'll tell you about it in just a moment. And the most have had very little. There's people in this country that, that are extremely, extremely rich. And then the majority who are extremely poor. And so it's a disparity between the people who have and who have not. And this hasn't changed as society has moved forward. If you look back 100 years, I was reading a book by Napoleon Hill called Think and Grow Rich, and he was talking about the Great Depression back in the 1930s. I think it was around that time. Maybe a little bit before that time or a little bit after that time. But he was mentioning the same issues that we're dealing with now, where the rich is very, very wealthy and the poor is very poor. So this isn't something brand new. This is something that has existed for quite a while, where it's been a big disparity in the money that the large number of population, the majority of the population has, and the few people, how much money they have, and it just seems very striking and strange. And I went on about, there are many fallacies about wealth, and there's a lot of strange things people believe about wealth and happiness and life in general. And many people go through their lives dismayed by what life has shown them, because their beliefs have been passed down through their family, community, society, and religion. So many people are far removed from their God-given nature. And that's important, God-given nature. I want to talk all about these ideas, that I'm talking about through this answer that I was given to this question. Why is there poverty and suffering in the world? It's very difficult for humans to see suffering and feel sympathy and see lack and not feel powerless. Instead of resorting to sympathy, we should feel empathy, Because that's just the difference between sympathy and empathy. There's a difference. And because empathy is placing some, hey, there's a fellow human being, and I see other human beings suffering. I go, wow, I feel compassion for that person. I want to help that person. I want to do something to better the life of that person I'm looking at. Sympathy is just going, oh, poor person, or feeling sorry for someone, but just doing nothing about it. There's an energy difference when it comes to empathy and sympathy. So I want to just clarify that, look the definition up of empathy and sympathy and see the difference about one is proactive and one is reactive. And there's a difference about truly helping someone and just feeling sorry for someone. And because we should place ourselves in other people's shoes, and understand that, and understanding that we can be very helpful. And Rob has a question for me, and I'm sorry I didn't see your question, Rob. Let me go back and see, Mr. Rob. What was your question? Oh, Rob said, did it make me feel something? I'm assuming when Rob is asking this question, it was saying, did what make me feel something? Did going back into 2004 when I was the news? Okay, I'm in the chat room, you guys. If you're listening to me on the radio, I'm in www.awakenradio.net/live chat, and Rob was asking a question about my journaling and why don't I put news, the news, things that are going on in the news, why don't I put it in my journal? And I just don't usually. And Rob wants to know why not. Isn't there a reason? The reason behind it, or does it make you? Even if I felt negative reactions to negativity in my blog. At least I felt something. So not the news, but the feelings connected to the news. Okay, thank you for clarifying that, Rob. To me, this is my belief. My belief is that everything has energy, and the television is one of the most powerful things that produces energy in the world. Before the television was the radio. But watching the TV, and you're seeing all kinds of energy that's coming from the television accompanied by beliefs, and you don't have any control over it. You cut the TV on, commercials are coming at you, commentary is coming at you, and this is done on a subconscious level by people who have been trained to get you to believe what you believe. People whose will is many times more stronger than the average person because they understand the laws. There are people out there who understand spiritual law and manifestation law. They understand it down to a niche. And they have put that into our commercials, and they've put that into our news, and it wasn't benefit me. When I watch news, I go, oh my God. And yes, it makes me feel something, but why would I want to feel like I'm living in chaos after I watch the news when I'm not living in chaos? So I had to be careful about what I give my attention to, because I know how I want to feel, and I don't want to feel like the world is in chaos, because that's just not what I believe. I believe that the world is going just as it should. And so I want to be in tune to the things that supports that belief, not giving my attention to things that says the world is falling apart, that there's evil and destruction in the world, and the devil is winning, and all that stuff, which I don't believe. So I don't go out looking for things to support those ideas. And when you watch the news, my God, after you finish watching it, you're just what you want to believe, because that's the evidence to support it, and it's not true. If you really was to look at what's going on in the community and see the good things that are going on, the love and the compassion that humans have, it's a very different picture than what the news represents and what it reflects and shows. Very good question, Rob. Thank you so much. And so back to the poverty and suffering in the world. We'll talk more about that when we come back from our break, but I do believe we have 2 more minutes before we get to the break. But I do want to talk more about the difference between empathy and sympathy, and I want to talk more about why do humans feel so powerless, especially in America. We feel extremely powerless, that we have no power over anything, when we actually have more power than someone who's in a communist country, or someone who can't vote, or someone who just live in a situation where their opinion doesn't have a major impact on the political system. And, we want to spring into action when we see injustice in the world. And that's extremely important. So we'll talk more about that when we get back from the break. And hi, Susan. Thank you for joining us. Hello, good evening. We're back with Spiritual Calling, and we're talking about several different issues. Excuse me. We're talking about several different things, and what I left off before we went to break was, why the poverty and suffering in the world. And where I left off was about sympathy versus empathy, and what's the difference? Because I can have sympathy for someone, and it doesn't improve anything. It doesn't improve myself or the person that I'm feeling sympathy for. But I think empathy, what I believe is empathy, and it may not improve the person. You can't improve the person that you're seeing, and you feel sorry for, or you're feeling compassion for, but sometimes it doesn't improve our lives. It actually takes away from us. So I think empathy, to me, is something that I try to feel compassion for people and try to understand that we all suffer the same, that no one's pain is greater or lesser than my own. And if that person is suffering, then there's a part of me that could experience the same kind of suffering. So I try to keep that in mind when I'm dealing with people and I'm paying attention to the suffering of others. I try to do it through compassion and that empathy, especially when someone does something that we deem as stupid. Because when I am kind of bombarded by things that are going on in the world that I have to give my attention to, I have to go with a certain level of empathy, because sometimes it's hard to have empathy for someone doing something that you think you would never do, or you say, I would never feel that. I would never do that. Through empathy, it can show you that if you're a human being, you have all the components that will allow you to do the same thing as put in the same situation. No one is better than anyone else, or no one is less than anybody else. So I try to remember that when it comes to, when I look at what's going on out in the world, that we all suffer the same. So And especially when I've been to countries that I've been in countries that are less fortunate than America, and uh, the people there, even though they didn't have all the things that we have in America, like go Walmart's is just down the street where you can get in your car and drive a few miles, sometimes less, sometimes more, to get to a Walmart, to get to a Target, buy, um, whatever you want in bulk. We don't. Uh, some places don't have that luxury, but it doesn't make them less than us. One documentary that I was looking at, and it was called Born Rich, and there's a Johnson and Johnson heir named Jamie Johnson who actually produced uh, this documentary about the disparity between the rich and the poor, and he really goes into depth about uh, why is there such disparity? Why is there such disparity between how much money the rich have and how much money the poverty is, um, between the poverty level? And it's only going to get worse. You know, the Bible quote, and it's also one of my favorite songs, Billie Holiday, and she says that the richer get richer and the poorer get poor. Mother may have, father may have, but God bless the child that has his own. One of my favorite jazz standards. And it's so true. It's so true that it's so true that uh, the rich gets richer and the poor gets poor. And the reasons behind that is because there are certain people who understand certain fundamentals about life and other people who don't understand certain fundamentals about life. So when you don't understand certain fundamentals about life, life seems very confusing. And when a society doesn't understand or a community doesn't understand things about life, then they're going to have some major problems. Major problems. And when we put someone in power, because we have power to vote in this country, we can vote for who we decide to vote for here in America. And when we vote for someone that proves to the world that we don't understand certain fundamentals, there are certain things that must happen, to show that we don't understand certain fundamentals, And we have to be very conscious about what we put out into the world and who we put in charge to make decisions with our money, with our military. To be very careful about that, because if one person in charge makes the wrong decisions, it affects all of us. It affects every single one of us. It affects the whole world. So we have to be extremely careful about knowing the fundamentals about improving life and what does not improve life, and making sure that we're making decisions that improves our lives. So that's extremely important, and I want people to begin asking more questions, because people don't ask, and so I'm so thankful for Rob who just asked me a wonderful question about feeling. We want to feel something, and that's important. We want to feel something, and there are times when I just want to feel something, and I listen to a song that I know that inspires me, or I'll go look at a movie that inspires me. But it wouldn't make any sense putting in something that I hate. Saying, okay, well, I don't feel anything, so I'm going to go out and try to feel something horrible. I want to go and talk to my enemies. It wouldn't make any sense. I want to be inspired. I want to feel compassion and love, because I know when I give my attention to that, it's going to be reproduced. It's going to be reproduced at an exponential rate when I give my attention to it. So I'm very careful what I give my attention to. So I'm reading these 20 questions. I'm not going to be able to get to every single one of them in this hour show. But the second question that was in this 20 questions about spirituality was, what's the relationship between religion and science? And I tell anybody, I tell the Pope, I'm not a religious person. I'm a spiritual person, because to me, what religion does is religion tells you how to live your life and what you should believe. And spirituality says that, each person is born with their own beliefs and values, and you need to tap into that, know yourself and present that at all times. You want to know who you are, and it's a constant evolving thing. So when you're constantly evolving and you don't even know who you are, and you're not even trying to keep up with who you're changing to be in every second, then you're going to be very lost. And trying to present that at all times, it'll be a nightmare for someone who is not being conscious about who they are, what they're about, what they believe. So spirituality is about trying to find out who I am. And once I have some kind of concept about who I am, I try to bring that to the table in my discussions, in my job, in my life, in any aspect of my life. I try to bring that to the table. And that's spiritual life. Religion doesn't offer that. Religion says that, this is what we believe, and you must believe this in order to get to heaven. And, that wasn't nice to me growing up when I was being raised in a Pentecostal church. I just felt like, there's some things going on here that you guys aren't explaining to me. There's some things that I'm paying attention to that you guys are not talking about. And when you ask those questions, the hard questions, someone is going to say to you, shut your mouth. Shut your mouth. You're asking the wrong questions. And angrily, I might add. And sometimes that was the situation when you ask too many questions. Someone told you to shut your mouth and stop asking questions, kind of fall in line. And so I've never been, I don't think of myself as a religious person, but a spiritual person. And a third question that it asked, this was a wonderful, wonderful question. I just thought, wow, this is just genius. And the third question was, why are there so many people depressed? And there are. If you look at the number of people that are on antidepressants, and I have nothing against antidepressants. If your doctor says that you need to be on certain medications and, that's what you need to do, then that's what you need to do. But unfortunately, what I've discovered for me is there are God-given talents. There's certain things that are in my nature, that are in my DNA. That are just who I am. And I have to be mindful of that, of my natural God-given talents, and try to cultivate that. And when I go against it, you'll start feeling like you're disconnected. And I think that's where our depression comes from. And I'll talk about, another day about when I went through a depression. It was a difficult time in my life. Susan, in the live chat room at awakenradio.net, she said, I remember that point in my childhood, I did shut up until recently. I was conflict avoidant. And that's a lot of times, that's what happens, Susan, when we're raised in strict religious homes. When you start asking questions and someone says to you, shut your mouth and get in line. and you're just not allowed to uh, say, well, who wrote the Bible? Because that's the question that I asked when I was 7 or 8. I asked my mother. I said, Mom, who wrote the Bible? And she said to me, God wrote it. And that was very confusing for me because this church taught us, they didn't teach us what God was. They taught us what God was not. So, God is not a man. He doesn't have hands, or he doesn't have legs. He doesn't, he's this omnipresent force. And I said, okay, that's interesting. And I said, well, if he doesn't have a hand, or a brain, how does this person without a brain or a hand write the Bible? And my mother said, God wrote the Bible. And I said, how? She looked at me and said, as a black woman can, she said, don't you worry about that. Just know that God wrote it. And I was like, okay. So it's sort of like telling me that don't ask any more questions, and stop thinking, and this is what we believe, and that's it. So many years later, it never really I mean, I didn't ask any more questions about that because I didn't want to, be punished because, I'm 8 years old and my mother, she's my mother. So, you stop asking questions because you don't want to be punished because you're just a child and you're so small and, the adults are so big. So, but later when I got old enough, I had the chance to begin researching and finding out, well, where did the Bible come from? And as you go back and do the research, you will see that, it's something that's been edited and re-edited and rehashed by kings and popes and many people to get it to the final place where it's at now. And it's many people have written the Bible. Basically, I was shocked to discover that man wrote the Bible, So that's what I found out. So, so many people are depressed in the world. I want to get back to that about depression. And like I said, I'll go into the years where I went through my depression. I can talk about that another time. And it was I needed to wake up. That was the reason I was going through my depression. My life was telling me to wake the hell up. That there are things about you that you're going to have to accept. And if you can't accept these things, then you're not going to be here. You're not going to be in the land of the living. You're going to be dead through self-destruction. If you can't accept who you are and what you believe and be willing to stand up for what you believe, and I'm saying you all the time, but it's I, what I believe, stand up for what I believe. And if I can't stand up for what I believe, my life cannot be here. I can't be in the land of the living. And there are people who are able to lie and say they believe something and not even bother to go through life to investigate who they are as a person and get through life just fine. Maybe heavily medicated, heavily addicted to something, but my life wasn't going to allow me that. My life was going to make sure that if I'm going to be here, then I was going to have to say it like I mean it and be about it. So when I finally understood that, I was lifted. I was freed from depression and from just having a minimal life. So my honest God belief to my core is that depression is derived from not being who you really are, not cultivating that, standing up in that. And when your beliefs and values are not who you are at the core, you're going to have some major problems. So Susan in the chat room, and I love your comments. And she says, my immediate family was not religious, but my grandfather was an Anglican minister. He was so cool that when my mother didn't want to baptize me, so I could make up my own mind that he was all right with it, I asked questions about the stuff that no one knew answers to, and I think I made them think too hard and remember they were vulnerable. Yeah, you know. So sometimes when people don't have an answer for you, it's like they just clam up or they don't have anything to say. But life is about questions. And that's why I'm so glad that we have words and books that we can go back and see the thoughts of the giants that came before us to see what their wonderful thoughts were, and we can build on those thoughts. And people like Wayne Dyer, he's one of the first books that I read. When I was going through some difficult times in my life, I read this book called Erroneous Zones, and that book really freed me a great deal about some of the beliefs that I held that didn't even benefit me. You know, the beliefs and values that I held had nothing to do with me. And that book, sort of Erroneous Zones, really opened my eyes. And I was so blown away by that book that I took it home and I kept listening to it over and over again because it blew me away. And a family member said to me, well, you know, I believe some of it, but some of it I don't believe. And I didn't ask any questions about, you know, which parts do you believe and which parts you don't believe, because I knew that they wouldn't believe it anyway. I knew that was so far from their perspective that they were never going to accept that we're responsible for ourselves, that we're responsible for our own lives, and we're responsible for whatever happens to us. And most people don't believe that. So when they have someone saying that in a book, they go, wait a second, we're not responsible for what we believe. We're not responsible for any of it. Someone else has control over our destinies. No, we're it. We are responsible for our destiny. You are in the driver's seat. So I'm in the driver's seat. And we have to take responsibility for the reality that we create for ourselves. And we have to be willing to say no to certain things and yes to things we want to experience, that we would like to experience. Another question that was from this 20-question survey about spirituality, and it said, why are we all so afraid? Why are so many people afraid? And people are very afraid of so many things. And I think the biggest thing that we are afraid of is change. I think that's the biggest thing that everyone is afraid of. Change. And if nothing happens, what's going to happen is change. It's inevitable. So don't be afraid of the inevitable. Don't be afraid that things are going to change. Accept change, because change is going to happen. Nothing you can do about that. And the fifth question, when is war justifiable? You know, I kind of thought about that for a second. When is war justifiable? And my answer to that was, war is never justifiable. War is never justifiable. War is a course of action. So that's what I believe. War is a course of action. It's not something that we justify. You know? And For one of the last questions that I want to go into, how would God want us to respond to aggression and terrorism? And this is a little bit tricky. How would God want us to respond to aggression and terrorism? God would want us to respond to aggression and terrorism the way we would want to be treated if we had initiated aggression and terrorism. Because that's what happens. You know, if you send out negative behavior, and there's been times that I've done it. I'm a witness to it. I've put out negative intentions, negative emotions, and it all came back to me. It all came back to me. Sometimes worse than when I first sent out negative intention, negative emotions. So when we send out negativity, we should already expect negativity to come back to us. It's just the way the universe works. It's that boomerang effect. So that we should respond to we have to do what we have to do, but we need to be compassionate. So I have 5 minutes until my broadcast ends. Thank you guys for joining me. And I always try to end our broadcast, the Spiritual Calling broadcast, talking about some of the things that are going on with Spiritual Calling. But I want to really give kudos to Donna Devane, who runs Awaken.net, because she's really stepped it up, and I think 2013 is going to be a great, wonderful year for AwakenRadio.net and all the new hosts that have joined us, like Rob. Thank you, Rob. I really appreciate your compliment. And it's going to be a wonderful year, and I just feel it. We have to claim it. We have to be willing to put our stake into the ground and say, this is what I want to happen. I am setting my intention, and this is what must happen. And I'm glad that Donna's doing that. You can't make excuses. You can't apologize. You have to press forward. This is what makes a person successful. This is what makes a person do well out in the world. It's a person who's willing to make no apologies for saying, this is the reason I'm doing this. This is what I want to happen. I want to be successful, and I want to take successful people with me.